In the United States, running for office is a very expensive endeavor. Where do the millions of dollars that it takes to run for a presidential office come from? Political candidates have two options. They can either accept public funding from the government or raise money from private donors. The government will provide them with sufficient funds to run a campaign, but they must follow strict rules on how they spend the money. Whereas with private funding, they can basically spend it as they please. One major problem with getting public funding from the government is that's not the only money that the candidate will receive. Oftentimes, they'll take the money given from the government plus the money given to them from private donors, and they'll have millions of dollars to spend, making it very hard for a candidate that does not have an elite status to be able to keep up in an election race. In our elections today, candidates should not be allowed to use any private or donated funds to enhance their campaign in order to make it fair for people of all economic statuses to run for office. Our government should continue to help facilitate funding for the elections, but this should be the only form of funding that the candidates receive. All candidates should be given the same amount of funding so that it is fair for all people running in the election. They should be able to use these funds as they please as long as it's going towards the election race. This new system would help our political system stray from the elitist club that has become and go back towards the average American. Giving each candidate the same amount of set funds would also give them a chance to show voters how well they can budget and use their funding and give them an example of what it would be like when they're in office. Rather than candidates having to worry about raising money from wealthy donors, they would be able to focus on winning over their voters with views on politics rather than how extravagant their campaign is. This would also help bring interest back to the general public in voting in elections because the public would have a greater sense of the candidates they're voting for. Money from private donors can then be used once in office to be put towards projects they would like to fund rather than being wasted on campaigns. Many may argue that it would be impossible to run an election without the millions of dollars raised from private donors, but it can be done. Private funding in elections drives politics to become an elitist club and separates it from the average American. Without the private funding, elections would be accessible for candidates of any status of wealth. America's politicians could actually be representative of the public rather than the small percentage of wealthy people. You can help raise money for public funding by checking the box to donate $3 to public funding on your federal income tax return. In doing this, you will help take away the need for funding from private donors and support the candidates in the upcoming elections. Thank you.